Welcome to today's Explainer, where we're going to break down literally the ultimate high-stakes scenario. Picture this. It's 8:07 a.m. on a totally standard Tuesday morning in the suburbs. Out of nowhere, every single phone in the house emits that piercing alarm sound. You look down, and the screen reads, Presidential Alert. Ballistic missile threat inbound. Seek shelter immediately. This is not a drill. Now I know, it sounds like the plot of a Hollywood blockbuster, right? But the science behind what happens next, and exactly how human behavior dictates who lives and who doesn't, well, it's incredibly real. Today, we're going to look at how to actually survive a nuclear blast, hour by hour, right from your own home. Okay, let's dive into this terrifying number. So when that FEMA wireless emergency alert hits your phone, it literally bypasses all cellular traffic to warn you instantly. But because an inbound warhead is traveling at roughly 15 times the speed of sound, which is just wild to think about, by the time your phone actually buzzes, you've got exactly 15 minutes left before impact. Just 15 minutes. That is a quarter of an hour to make decisions that will absolutely dictate the rest of your life. But what do most of us actually do with those precious 15 minutes? Well, we fall into a massive psychological trap called milling. You see, when faced with an impossible threat, the human brain just kind of stalls out. Instead of taking immediate action, people gather information. They seek confirmation, they stare out the window, or they text a friend like, hey, are you seeing this? In 2018, when a real inbound ballistic missile false alert hit every single phone in Hawaii, researchers studied the response, and a huge portion of the population completely disbelieved it or wasted their time trying to verify it online. The data shows it took most people about 12 to 15 minutes just to stop milling and finally act. Think about that. In a real scenario, losing 12 to 15 minutes to milling means you've just consumed your entire survival window. Let's look at two suburban neighbors to see exactly how this plays out. First up, we've got Gary. Now, Gary has been prepping for the apocalypse for a decade. He's got bug-out bags, backup generators, freeze-dried meals, the whole shebang. Within 1 minute of that alert, Gary is in his fully loaded truck, gunning it out of the driveway to evacuate to rural Indiana. Then we have David. David is totally unprepared. He burns a few crucial minutes, milling, just staring at his phone in total disbelief. But then, he remembers this single, laminated card he made from a late-night internet deep dive a couple of years ago, which is literally just sitting at the bottom of his kitchen junk drawer. He grabs his family, and they head straight down to his damp, unfinished basement. As you'll see, Gary is relying on his standard evacuation instincts, whereas David is relying on pure scientific protection. So here's the very first rule on David's laminated card. Do not evacuate. Go below grade immediately. Honestly, this goes against pretty much every single narrative we're taught in standard evacuation drills, right? When something terrible happens, our gut instinct is to run, put distance between us and the threat, get out of Dodge. But in a ballistic missile scenario, this counterintuitive truth is absolutely crucial. Motion does not equal survival. Stillness does. The reason for this rule brilliantly illustrates a concept that emergency planners use called the protection factor. Basically, this quantifies how much a structure reduces your radiation exposure compared to just standing outside in the wide open. Gary's truck, despite all the expensive tactical gear packed inside, has a protection factor of 2. The metal frame offers negligible shielding, and the glass? 0, none. From a radiation standpoint, a car is essentially just a large rolling window. But David's suburban basement, that has a protection factor of 10 to 40. The concrete, the surrounding soil, and the sheer mass of the house provide a genuine shield against gamma radiation. Meanwhile, Gary is currently stuck in a massive traffic jam of panicked evacuees. From a radiation perspective, he might as well be standing barefoot in his front yard. Down in the basement, David reads the second rule on his card: stay below grade. Do not go upstairs for any reason. The danger is invisible. Now, looking through a tiny cracked basement window, David spots another neighbor, Linda. She's standing in her driveway, completely panicked, milling around and shouting into her phone. She runs up to his house, pounding on the glass for help. And man, David feels this incredibly powerful, almost biological urge to go upstairs, open the door, and wave her in. But here's the harsh reality. Opening that door turns his sealed shelter into an unsealed one. The danger out there is airborne, and he simply cannot risk his family. He has to make the incredibly grim decision to stay below grade. And then the countdown hits 0. If you're far enough from the epicenter, let's say about 20 miles out, the mechanics of the detonation play out in a very specific, totally terrifying sequence. First comes the flash. It arrives without a single sound, lasts just 4 seconds, and it is a light so incredibly bright the human brain doesn't even have a name for it. Then there's this eerie 90-second delay, just absolute, dead silence as the blast travels outward. Finally, the shockwave hits. But it doesn't even arrive as a sound. It's this massive percussive shudder that rushes through the earth, shakes the foundation of the house, and travels straight up into the soles of your shoes. And then silence again. The blast came, and the blast went. Because the house is actually still standing and the sky outside probably looks blue, the human brain automatically assumes the threat is over. We evolved to assess visible threats, Like if a predator is there, you see it. But gamma radiation doesn't present itself like that. David checks his fourth rule. It is not over. The fallout cloud is coming. Do not open any doors or windows. See, the initial fireball sucked enormous amounts of dirt, concrete, and debris up into the air, completely vaporizing and irradiating it. Now, that invisible, totally lethal cloud of radioactive fallout is drifting directly toward their neighborhood at about 15 miles an hour. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the pure, life-saving math behind the 7-10 rule. This is the part nobody talks about, mostly because it just requires sitting still and doing absolutely nothing. Basically, for every 7-fold increase in time after a detonation, the radiation dose rate drops by a factor of 10. So what does that mean? It means if the radiation outside is at 100% at hour 1, by hour 7 it has plummeted to 10%, and by hour 49 it's down to just 1%. Time itself is literally your ultimate weapon against the fallout. The math simply requires you to stay put in a basement for 48 hours. That's it. As they wait, something subtle changes outside. The sunlight becomes kind of diffused. And then David reads his 6th rule. If you see particles falling outside, do not go near the windows. This is fallout. It is lethal. Outside the basement window, a fine gray dust begins to fall. It looks exactly like snow, just drifting lazily and covering the lawns, the cars, the streets. People often think of radiation purely as like invisible rays, but fallout from a ground burst is actually a highly physical, very visible threat. To really wrap our heads around what this lethal snow actually is, we can look back at history. Back in 1954, the U.S. detonated a thermonuclear weapon called Castle Bravo over in the Marshall Islands. It was a massive 15-megaton blast that literally vaporized 10 million tons of sand, coral, and water. When that fallout cloud drifted over 100 miles to Rongelap Atoll, it literally looked like snow falling in July. Kids played in it, adults just kept working outside. But it's actually pulverized, highly irradiated matter, following the most basic law of physics. What goes up must come down. This stark divide between our two neighbors ultimately comes down to one thing: exposure. David and his family are safely eating cold canned soup, just letting that 7-10 rule do its work over 48 hours. But out on the highway, Gary, who is still trapped in his truck, is fully exposed. Within the first few hours, folks caught outside suffer the prodromal symptoms of acute radiation syndrome. We're talking severe nausea, vomiting, intense fatigue. But honestly, the cruelest part is the latent stage. After those initial symptoms, a person might actually look and feel completely healthy for hours or sometimes even weeks. They think they've recovered, but it's completely deceptive. Eventually, the severe illness returns in full force, and the bill comes due. So you're probably wondering, what happens if you do get exposed and need to re-enter a shelter? Well, the practical steps for decontamination are surprisingly simple but absolutely vital. Step 1. Remove your outer layer of clothing. Just doing this alone eliminates up to 90% of radioactive contamination. 90%. Step 2. Wash thoroughly with soap and water. And step 3. This is a big one. If you wash your hair, use shampoo, but absolutely no conditioner. Seriously, no conditioner. Hair conditioners contain compounds that will actually bind radioactive particles directly to your hair strands, basically trapping the contamination underneath the protein scales. It's wild that a simple, everyday bathroom product can act as a fatal trap, but it's true. The effectiveness of basic concrete, soil, and just staying still cannot be overstated. Consider the incredible true story of Izo Nomura. In 1945, he was just 500 feet from ground zero in Hiroshima when the bomb detonated. 500 feet! He survived because he just happened to be down in the basement of a reinforced concrete building. He didn't have some color-coded emergency binder, he didn't have an expensive bug-out bag or a tactical vehicle. He just had the shielding of a concrete basement, and he lived to be 84 years old. Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. Our heavily prepared neighbor Gary let his complex evacuation plans completely override basic physics, driving straight into an exposed traffic jam. Meanwhile, David protected his family not with expensive gear, but with stillness, patience, and a few bullet points on a piece of paper. Simple knowledge and a concrete basement beat panic every single time. So if your phone buzzed right now, would your survival plan fit in a junk drawer? Really think about it. Thanks for joining me for this explainer. And remember, sometimes the absolute best action to take is no action at all.